Welcome to my Epiphysical channel. In my first video, I introduced the idea of an emergent overarching science that encompasses both physics and metaphysics, for which I have coined the name Epiphysics. I mentioned the fact that consciousness is the foundation of reality, and that there would be no reality without it. From a purely physical perspective, that statement appears preposterous. The purely materialistic perspective on consciousness is that it is a phenomenon that emerges out of the complexity of biological organisms and is confined to the nervous systems of said individual organisms. I think that the majority of people who consider themselves to be scientists adhere to this view. They have not yet awakened to the fact that it is a demonstrably false anti-scientific view. There is, in fact, a sound mathematical proof that it is false, which I will discuss in a future video. For now, we are going to assume what is true to be true and see where that takes us. If indeed consciousness is the foundation of reality, then the physical world must be made of consciousness, not the other way around. So if we want to develop an epiphysical understanding of the universe, we will need to answer the question, how does consciousness make the physical world? Perhaps a good way to start would be to search for some correlation between consciousness and a physical process. The infamous quantum mechanical double slit experiment is an excellent example of such a correlation. It provides powerful evidence that physical reality and consciousness are inextricably linked, and I will discuss it from a unique perspective in a future video, but there is actually a far more eye-opening correlation that exists. To find it, we will have to go up in scale. Quantum mechanics is the physics of the very small, of atoms and subatomic particles. There is a level of simplicity at that tiny scale, which allows the relationship between matter and consciousness to become apparent. As we go up in scale, however, things get extremely complex very quickly. Biological organisms display undeniable signs of life, of which consciousness is one component. Yet the incredible complexity of living organisms tends to obscure the relationship between life, matter, and consciousness. We have to go all the way up to the scale of the solar system to find once again the level of simplicity which allows clarity to emerge. Please pay attention to the animation that has been playing throughout this video. It depicts something that is the key to an understanding of the relationship between life, matter, and consciousness. What you see is a diagram showing how we, on the Earth, see the Sun as we orbit around it in yearly cycles. Two planes are depicted. The equatorial plane is an imaginary extension of the Earth's equator out into space. We can see that the Earth revolves around an axis that is at right angles to the equatorial plane. The ecliptic is an imaginary circle in the sky tracing the path of the Sun through the stars throughout the year. The equatorial and ecliptic planes are at an angle to each other. The angle is roughly 23.5 degrees. The little Sun traversing the ecliptic plane is not the actual Sun. Of course, the Sun does not go around us, we go around the Sun. But what is important is the relationship depicted. Because the Earth is rotating, it is not a perfect sphere. it is what is known as an oblate spheroid. What that means is that it is slightly fatter around the equator. Colloquially, one might say that it has a spare tire. Because the Earth has a spare tire, the Sun's gravity pulls on it in a way that causes it to wobble. One aspect of that wobbling is the precession of the equinoxes. The points in the diagram where the ecliptic and equatorial planes intersect are called the equinoxes. They are the 2 times in the year when night and day are of equal length. These points precess around the ecliptic, taking 25,772 years to complete one cycle or great year. Arrayed around the ecliptic, we see 12 sections, each with a glyph representing a sign of the zodiac. The zodiacal signs are not defined by the constellations that the ecliptic passes through. They are simply named after them. Since they were named, the precession of the equinoxes has carried the signs away from the constellations they were named after. Now, the spring equinox, which defines the beginning of Aries, is in the constellation of Pisces, which the preceding sign is named after. It will eventually enter the constellation of Aquarius, at which time we will move from the age of Pisces into the much vaunted age of Aquarius. We can see in the diagram the way that the signs are defined by the equinoxes. They are 12 equal divisions of the ecliptic into 30-degree sections, starting with the beginning of Aries at the spring equinox. That fact is extremely important. It defines a pattern which we will discover to be mirrored in the physics. Thus, it will act as a correlation between the physics and comprehensive observations made by countless sages over thousands of years about the way consciousness expresses itself differently throughout the year. The precession of the equinoxes is essentially circular, like the wobble of a spinning top, but it doesn't happen in a perfectly circular fashion. There is a wobble to the wobble. In the animation, the red line that goes vertically from the little sun image and joins the red oval grows as the sun rises above the equatorial plane. The wobble caused by the pull of the sun on the Earth's spare tire grows accordingly. This causes the Earth's circular precession to advance in a yearly wave-like motion. In a future video, I will demonstrate how that wave-like motion correlates with a triple cycle within a single cycle, thus exactly matching the 12 signs of the zodiac. For now, I will finish by pointing out what is so significant about the wobble. At the end of my introductory video, I promised that I would point out in this video the correlation that I had uncovered between physics and an area of metaphysics. In case you haven't guessed, that area of metaphysics is the science of astrology. In future videos, I will demonstrate the correlation and explain its significance in detail, thus establishing that astrology is indeed a proper science. Actually, it is a science of consciousness. For now, I will simply leave you with the observation which tweaked my intuition when I first began to study astrology. When I first learned that the signs of the zodiac are defined not by the constellations, as many cynical debunkers ignorantly assume, but by the equinoxes, it was a revelation. I realized that the same kind of physics was in play in the wobble of the Earth as was involved in the way consciousness expresses itself at a quantum mechanical scale. The wobble of the Earth is actually an exchange of spin between the two ways in which the Earth is spinning. That is to say, between the orientation of its orbit around the Sun and its revolution about its axis. Similarly, changes in quantum mechanical states are defined by discrete changes of spin. This observation enabled me to intuit that I could find the correlation that I eventually discovered. It took many years, but eventually I found it in 2013. It has opened up a level of clarity that went way beyond what I had anticipated. That will take a lot of videos to explain. For now, thank you for your attention.